Hi everyone, it's Plastic EP coming in from Melbourne, Australia. I've got my great friend Kit O'Toole. I've got Don Jeffries, who's written a book. Now, Kit, do the introduction to the book, please.
All right. Well, this is a kind of a fascinating story in Beatles history. The book is called From Strawberry Fields to Abbey Road, a Billy Shears story. And it's by two friends of mine, Bob Wilson, and joining us today, Don Jeffries. And it's a book that takes a look at the Paul is dead controversy that happened. Find a kind of a fascinating. I mean, obviously, kind of a rumor that started in the late '60s that Paul McCartney died in a car crash, and that an actor named William Campbell took over the role of Paul McCartney, and that there were these clues that you could find, and we'll go into that in a minute, but on album covers, you could hear it in backwards messages and on certain songs. And this book takes a deeper look at those supposed clues and interviews a number of people, authors, musicians, actors and actresses. You won't believe the number of people that pop up in this book, and I'm honored to say I'm one of the people that was interviewed for this book to get their thoughts on this whole thing, that the hoax, that or the clues, so forth. And some of them were born. We're first generation fans, I should say. Some of them are like me, second generation fans. So you get all kinds of perspectives on this very interesting part of Beatles history.
Yeah, Don, we just want to welcome you to the show. How are you today?
Fine, thanks for having me. This is fun. We're just starting to do interviews about this, and it's a little bit of a departure for me. Although I wrote a book about entertainment on borrowed fame, that was my last published book, so I do cover that stuff as well. And I've always been a huge Beatles fan, like pretty much everybody almost. And I remember hearing about this as a little kid about the Paul is dead thing, and it fascinated me then, and it kind of went away. But I thought it would be fun, Bob, and I thought it would be fun. It was basically Bob Wilson's idea for the book to get as many people as we could, get celebrities on the record. So we ended up getting, he got Lawrence Juber from Wings, a member of Wings. I got a member of the Lovin' Spoonful, Steve Boone. We got actors from the guy that played Timmy on Lassie, John Provis. We got Sally Kirkland, award-winning actress. We got Fred Laborde, who is the guy who's generally credited with starting Paul is Dead rumor. So lots of it. We've got David Wayne, my friend. I got to thank him especially because he got Richard Belzer, who just died. It's probably the last interview he ever gave was to us. So lots of interesting people, and people also talked. We asked about the Beatles in general as well, to show the impact that the Beatles had on that particular generation, because a lot of them were older than me, were teenagers already then when the Beatles came out, and they were some of them were part of the Screaming Girls. So it's some of them talked about seeing them in concert in LA and everything, seeing them live. So I think it's a fun book. I think people will be interested. Again, I have an open mind, but it's pretty unlikely that they could have found somebody that looked exactly like Paul McCartney, that was a left-handed bass player, could write those kind of songs and sing. Nothing is impossible, but let's just say it's readers can read and find out.
Okay, I just want to say now, being a first-generation fan, and it's like yesterday. So I'm going to use my memory now. It's not a problem, recall, to tell you what happened here, especially living in Australia, right? Now, the rumor came out, and we learned that it came from DJs in the United States, right? And then they ran with this rumor that Paul was dead, he died in a car crash, this and that. And then there's a colourful album that's a drawing, right? That has a small, tiny car going on a road aimed straight for someone's head, right? That's the first thing that came to us here in Australia. And then when you think about the intricate clues that the Beatles left, this is where you have to dwell in it. What was it all about? Now, I can tell you, here in Australia, the rumor came about that all this happened because the Beatles' record sales were falling, right? And that they were dropping. That was the reason behind all this Billy Shears stuff, right? Which made sense as well, because they're singing Billy Shears in 1967 on the Sgt. Pepper album. So it all goes together. And then you got George on the back cover. First time they got an album with words where George is pointing to a clue, right? At 6 o'clock, whatever, right? And then you've got the Sgt. Pepper album itself, where you've got the flowers designed as a base, like Paul is dead, right?
Yes.
So it's all these clues. And then Paul's outfit where it says the Canadian police, but that says like, you know, he's dead, pronounced dead. So it's like all these clues came from nowhere. And to even think of these clues, they went to a lot of trouble, and the Beatles must have loved it, because unless you know about it, you won't find it. Like the end of Sgt. Pepper, the groove is made for only dogs to hear. Did you know that bit?
Yep.
On the out groove, only dogs can hear it. It's so high.
Yeah.
Right. And then when you hear the muddling, you know, like John at the end of Strawberry Fields, right? And he's talking about Paul's being dead and all that. Everyone went out and bought the single just to play it on their record player to hear that.
Yeah.
And he says that he really was saying cranberry sauce or something. I mean, I'm just saying from recall what it actually was.
Yeah.
But I can tell you that the rumours here in Australia and the world was huge. So all these Beatle nuts are going around buying the albums looking for the clues. Paul's dead, and the world's like, you know, the Beatles couldn't talk about it and say Paul's dead because they'd put the world in shock. That's what that was all about, that they had to find a replacement because they couldn't, like, you know, people started getting upset or suiciding to find out that Paul died in a car accident or something. That is the true recall of what I remember.
Yep, absolutely. Well, and you'll see in the book, you know, all these different recollections from, you know, from everybody, just how much, you know, that this rumor took off. I mean, you know, you'll just be amazed. You know, Don, when you were, you know, soliciting all these different, you know, interviews, I mean, was there anything that really, you know, surprised you when you were talking to all these different personalities and you know, from all over? I mean, as to the scope of this rumor.
Well, not. I don't say. I think I would surprise that. I think pretty much all of the people that were old enough to have been and had a record player then, most of them said that they played the record backwards, try to find the clues. You know, because and I don't think, and I remember I think I tried. I couldn't figure out how to do it. I was little, and I never heard anything on it. I don't even know really how you do it. But
Yeah, I don't know how you do it.
yeah, no, but I obviously it was a short-lived phenomenon. But I don't know. I don't think anybody was playing. And after that, you saw like in other things, people play Led Zeppelin and things like that. And they look for clues. But I think it started with the Beatles, with the Paul's Dead thing. I think they're the ones that got people to start playing the records backwards. So I was now. I tell you, for instance, that we had Diane Renee, who sang Navy Blue is a huge hit in the U.S. in the early 1960s, and she was very gracious to talk to me, my friend on Facebook, and she talked about being the Beatles asked her to be their opening act on their, you know, tour in America, and for whatever reason, I forget what the reason was, but her manager advised her to turn it down. It probably wasn't a good career move for her, but so there was, you know, there are lots of things that, you know, people. I said some of these people talked about seeing the, especially the actors that were young then, you know, they talk about seeing the Beatles out, you know, in California when they were playing live and stuff, or maybe even in Shea Stadium, but somehow there was no hope of me having seen the Beatles live, and I did later see. I saw George Harrison, I saw Paul McCartney, and I saw Ringo. Lennon was my favorite, but he died, and he wasn't touring when I was old enough to do concerts. So, but I saw 3 of the 4 Beatles, but never together. But it was fascinating to hear the accounts of this, because you could tell how. I mean, there was nobody there that said I really didn't like the Beatles, anything like that. So, I mean, they all had a huge impact on these people's lives, especially the ones that went on into the entertainment business.
Yeah, I think that's the other thing about this book, and Plastic. When you get this, I think you're going to really get a kick out of it. That it's not only about the rumors, you know, it's not only about the Paul is dead thing. That it is also. I talked about this in my interview too. That you also get some interesting insights as to when all these people discovered the Beatles, what the Beatles meant to them, and even some fascinating stories from people who who met them, who may have worked with them. So you get other insights too. It's really an interesting book. And I'm not
Now-
just saying that because I'm in it.
Now, I'm going to tell you one of the clues that blows my mind, and I don't know if you've heard it. This may be the first time you're going to hear it, and this may be the first time that new Beatle listeners hear it. Now, if you get the Sgt. Pepper album and you get a small mirror and you put it halfway to the drum, the Sgt. Pepper words become "I Who Die." Did you know that?
Yeah. I've
No.
heard that. I've never tried to do that, but I have.
Try it because it works. Get a little mirror, put it halfway up the drum in the middle of it, and watch the reflection, and the words change to "I Who Die."
Well, you have to have you have to really work hard.
No,
to
but
come
I
up with
knew
a
that clue from back then.
Yeah, yeah. Well, you mentioned and Sergeant Pepper probably has the most clues on it, but it has a funereal aspect to the cover. It's iconic with all those figures, but it also has a funereal aspect to it. Clearly, the bass in there, that's a funeral wreath.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
so what were they going for? So I think clearly, and I talk about how McCartney has really only addressed these rumors a couple times, and in both occasions, his explanations made no sense. One of them, he talked about, I think it was "When I'm 60," I think it was "When I'm 64," some video that they did. I think it was that song, and they have a lot of roses being thrown about, a lot of red roses, and McCartney is seen walking around with a black rose as a lapel, and of course, people, oh, that means he's really dead.
I just want to say that's in their film Magical Mystery Tour when they're dancing down the steps. All the Beatles have got red ones, and he's got a black one.
Yeah, well, his explanation was, well, that's because we ran out of red roses, but you can see he's walking around with a black rose and he's throwing red roses everywhere in the air. So that makes no sense. And I think even more nonsensically, when he talked about the Abbey Road, they're walking across the street, the iconic picture where, John Lennon's supposed to be the preacher, and
that's
George
right.
is the gravedigger, and Ringo is the spectator, and McCartney's the corpse. Well, he's not wearing any shoes. So I think David Letterman or somebody asked him about, why aren't you wearing any shoes? And his explanation was that, well, I was wearing flip-flops and it was a really hot day.
Yeah, that's
so
right.
You took your flip-flops off, so your bare feet were on the pavement on a really hot day. That makes no sense. So
yeah, but that's like the Volkswagen in the corner, right? 28 if. Paul would have been 28 years old had he not died. You see,
right?
Things like that, when you look at the cover, that blow your mind. And in the right-hand side, there's a guy standing there under the trees, right? He just happened to be at the right time on the cover, and he made history by being there, and he's watching the Beatles crossing the road. Now, I also want to go back to Sgt. Pepper. If you see Paul, somebody behind has got a hand signal above him.
Oh, yeah.
Indian hand signal saying that he's dead.
Yep.
So to go in depth in all these clues.
Well, I think that's Fred Laborde, I think, claims he, and I don't think that is the Welsh symbol of death, but we don't know what the West symbol of death is. So if you're a little kid and you hear that, oh, wow. I mean, why is
that
there a
makes
hand
total sense. Yeah,
exactly.
You got to understand, at this point, nothing makes sense. This is the only band that the more they do the weird stuff, the more their albums are selling.
No,
people are Beatle nuts. I'll be honest with you, even today. I cannot understand the amount of books that are coming out, the amount of merchandise. I don't know how people have the money to buy Beatles stuff now. It's beyond me. I can't keep up. I stopped a long time ago.
Yeah. But I was just going to say that, the Beatles clearly had an inkling of all of they certainly knew about the over-analysis of their music and on the White Album, I mean, Glass Onion is the perfect example.
Yes.
I mean, the whole thing about, I've got another clue for you all, the walrus was Paul.
Right.
I mean, so they obviously knew about all of this and were having some fun with it.
They're just egging on their fans. That's what they're doing. They're loving it.
Yeah,
John Lennon must have loved it and said, this is great. But when you think about the clues, how intricate they are, and they really had to think about doing it. It's not something you make up willy-nilly. They thought about it. They must have had meetings about doing the clues and how they're going to do it, because it doesn't happen like that. They're not easy clues.
Well, and you point out, you and Bob in the book, John, about when Life magazine, finally sent reporters out to Paul's farm to confirm that he was indeed alive. And at first, Paul, as we know the story, chased off the reporters and then thought better of it because he's Mr. PR, right? And and so he then thought, hey, this is a great publicity opportunity. And of course, the funniest part is in that interview, he basically confirmed the breakup of the Beatles, and nobody paid any attention to that because everybody was so fixated on his supposed death and everything. But yeah, I mean, I think the Beatles, by doing a song like Glass Onion, by that whole thing, I think probably they did think, okay, this stuff is pretty stupid, but hey, it's good publicity.
Sure, it was, and Lennon was, for somebody who wasn't a fan of capitalism, supposedly he made a lot of money, and he was good at promotion. He was really, really good. So in my mind, I'm thinking Lennon was the one that dreamed this up. And I can't prove it, but I kind of got that message. He dreamed it up. Say, Paul, you be the one. You with the people who react the most to it because you're cute. The cute one. But the surface of it again is, and I think that people have talked about that, is why it's not like they haven't had lots of rock stars that died. And so why would they have to cover that up? That doesn't, so it's really on the surface of it. It's that their fans would be too distraught. I don't know. The Rolling Stones fans didn't go crazy when Brian Jones died, and lots of obviously other Buddy Holly, tons of big music acts died, and if anything, they've been thinking Lennon himself when he put out Double Fantasy, then boom, his record sales went through the roof. They said that about Elvis. That's a great career move. So really, if McCartney had actually died, it probably would have resulted in huge, I would think, record sales increasing for the Beatles. But I agree. I think that they definitely knew about it, and I don't know. And certainly Fred Laborde, who we talked to, is given credit for it. But even there, I don't know how many clues he invented, because he said he was listening to a radio station as he was a college student, and he was writing an article for a college newspaper, and somebody called in and was talking about Paul is dead. So that means somebody was talking about it before him. So where did that come from? So it was like something was in the air. And I put in my introduction, I have a couple other references to that, where there are these references out there even before that. So I don't know. It's like an urban legend or something, but it was out there in the air even before. He definitely seems to have, ferreted out a lot of the clues. But I'm with you guys. I think that most or all of them were planted there because the Beatles wanted people to.
But as I said, I think they had to do with falling record sales. That's all over the net too. But I just want to say one thing about John. Now, John, he heard a rumor, and it wasn't actually a rumor, but it got back to him from Liverpool that one of his teachers was actually dissecting his songs. So what does John do? Writes on the walrus to basically say, dissect this one then, This one's a beauty,
Yeah.
Yellow melon custard from a dead dog's eye. How are you going to dissect that one, and all the noises? That's what it was. That was in him. He loved it. I just did an interview where I got told, right, and this is fact, that in the early years at the Cavern, when the Beatles were playing, John got wind of the fact that Decca Records were coming to the Cavern to check them out. So you know what John did? John didn't give a crap. John went out there, sang wrong, played wrong notes, did everything wrong on purpose. So they went away back to London and go, they're not that good. He did that on purpose because he didn't care.
Yeah.
And that's what's said in the interview.
Mm-hmm.
Like
that sounds like John.
He loved putting people on.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and he got enjoyment out of it. He didn't care. Nothing fazed him. I mean, the guy's a genius. But, he also had his sense of humor that was right out there.
Mhm.
Sure.
Yep.
That's,
You know the one about Tom Jones, don't you? Do you know that one? What happened with him and Tom Jones?
I'm not sure.
I know that.
Okay, I'm going to tell you. You go to YouTube and you
Mhm.
type in Tom Jones talks about John Lennon. So what happens is they're doing a show, the Beatles, and they're doing a stage rehearsal, and Tom Jones is there sitting with his manager, right? And Tom Jones is Welsh, as you know. He's a big, solid guy, doesn't put up with crap. And here's John Lennon comes out, looks at him, and starts miming to one of his songs and says something about an elephant to one of his songs, right? And then starts calling him names, right? And at this point, Tom Jones is blowing up mad and wants to take him out, like knock him out. And the manager's telling him, don't worry about it. He's just having a go at you. He's just, that's his sense of humor, right? And Tom's fuming, right?
Mhm.
yeah. Well, I think that
Please
comes
do
out
me a
with,
favor. Go to YouTube and type in Tom Jones talks about John Lennon. And the
Yep.
way he says it, and I'm not going to say what John Lennon called him, right?
This is a
Yeah.
family show.
yeah.
That's right.
Well, I think that's part of the charm of the Beatles were they were all naturally very funny, but Lennon was really witty, and that's why a lot of people compared to the Marx Brothers in A Hard Day's Night. It's a shame they didn't do because really help was not up to the level of that, but that was just a great movie. It's still fun to watch, and it's because that cheekiness. I think that that was an adjective used to describe Lennon. He's cheeky. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's what it's always his most famous thing. I guess when he told those are the funks could rattle your jewelry. When he was talking to when he was they were playing before the Queen. He liked being irreverent, and I think if he was alive, I think he would probably think it was the most ridiculous thing in the world that Paul McCartney was a sir. I don't think Lennon would have ever been a sir. I don't think. I hope not. Anyhow.
Yeah. That's
Now-
probably true.
I just want to say, Bob, I want you to tell everybody now where the book's going to turn up. It's going to be released hopefully in the next couple of days, or it's already released. Can you please tell now everybody the links to where they can buy this fantastic book?
Although Bear Manor is the publisher, BEARMANOR. So you go to bearmanor.com and you'll see from Strawberry Fields to Abbey Roads by Bob Wilson and Don Jeffries, and it should be up on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, everywhere. Maybe even by the end of the show, hopefully. So just if you do a search for it, it'll at least come up to that, and we're hopeful it'll be out everywhere after that. And just go and get your best deal wherever you get it, wherever you buy your whoever you want to support. You can probably get a good deal with the publisher. I think there's I understand there's a 10% or 20% coupon off if you go to Bear Manor on this book. So I'm not sure how to do that, but I just heard that right before I came on the show. I didn't know about it before, so probably would behoove you to check out Bear Manor and see what the coupon's about there.
All right, we want everyone out there to go and buy this fantastic book, From Strawberry Fields to Abbey Road, a Billy Shears story, and get into the clues, go on the net, do whatever, because it is fascinating. And I mean, even reading about it, hearing about it, listening to radio shows about it, it's all part of history, whether we like it or not. And let me tell you, the Beatles were very inventive at that time. And as I said, Beatle nuts everywhere went and bought albums just for the cover to look for clues. Now we're in 2023. We got the luxury now of either buying a book, right, or going on the net and finding out more about it. And I'd like to thank you, Kit, and I'd like to thank you, Don, because it's a fantastic episode.
Oh, it was always a pleasure being back on, and it was an honor being part of this book. It was a lot of fun.
Thank you, guys.